All right, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into one of music history's most compelling and truly heartbreaking stories. The unraveling of a friendship between two absolute titans of hip hop, Tupac Shakur and Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls, or the notorious B.I.G. These guys weren't just monumental figures who changed music forever. Their story is it's a tragedy woven right into American culture. So our mission today for you is to go beyond just the headlines, beyond the surface level beef. We really want to understand the complex forces that tore these two legends apart.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, I mean, the material we've looked at really shows this, is that before the infamous East Coast versus West Coast feud even started, there was this, profound mutual respect, real admiration between Tupac and Biggie. They weren't just colleagues, navigating the same industry. They were, in a lot of ways, like brothers in the rap game. Our sources talk about them sharing meals, laughs, late-night conversations about their music, their lives. This wasn't some manufactured industry thing at the start, not at all. The evidence really points to a genuine, kind of deep-seated bond.
That's exactly right. I mean, think about it. Tupac, he was already a star, right? 2 albums out, a budding acting career, and he genuinely took Biggie, who was still, kind of finding his feet in Brooklyn. He took him under his wing. The sources paint this really vivid picture, like you said. Tupac inviting Biggie on stage, letting him freestyle to huge crowds, giving him industry advice. Everything from how to handle interviews to, navigating record deals. Exactly. He was like a mentor, almost a big brother figure, showing him the ropes in those early days. It's a level of camaraderie that, when you look at how it all ended, it's just really difficult to reconcile.
Precisely. And that's really the core of our deep dive today for you. We're going to try and pull apart the threads of this tragedy. We're looking at that perfect storm of outside influences that just ripped their friendship apart. Forces that, neither of them fully controlled in the end. We'll explore those pivotal moments, the escalating factors, really help you understand how it all spiraled so catastrophically out of control from that initial genuine connection.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. And tragically, where things just began to unravel fast. The critical turning point, the moment everything shifted, seems to be November 30, 1994. Tupac was supposed to be recording a track, right, at Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan, just a standard session. But that night, walking into the lobby, bang, he was ambushed, shot 5 times.
And crucially, it's not just that he was shot. It's the context surrounding it. Biggie and his Bad Boy Records crew, Sean Puff Daddy Combs included, they were upstairs in the very same building at the very same time.
Wow.
Yeah. So this wasn't some random attack in an alley somewhere. It happened in a place where Tupac knew, people he considered, friends. They were right there. That sheer proximity, it just created this immediate, visceral feeling of betrayal for Tupac.
I can only imagine.
Well, Biggie and Puff Daddy, the record shows, they immediately and strongly denied any involvement. They claimed they were totally unaware of what was happening downstairs until it was all over. But for Tupac, that perception of betrayal, that feeling of being lured into a trap, it was profoundly real and immediate. The material we reviewed makes it super clear that whether it was a deliberate setup or just a terrible, tragic coincidence, Tupac believed it was a betrayal.
Right. His perception became his reality.
Exactly. And this single event, it just caused this immediate, irreversible shift in their relationship. It sowed seeds of distrust that, tragically proved impossible to overcome. He even claimed, didn't he, that his chain was stolen during the attack.
Yeah, that detail really sticks out.
And he later believed that was deliberate, too. Done by the people he suspected. That personal violation, on top of the physical one, it just cemented his conviction.
Okay, so this one horrific event, the Quad Studio shooting, it becomes the catalyst. But how does it escalate from this deep personal betrayal into such a deadly rivalry? It didn't happen overnight, right?
No, not overnight. The evidence points to this really complex web of powerful forces at play. Each one sort of amplified that initial distrust and just kept pushing things closer to the breaking point. It really was a perfect storm.
So what were those forces?
Well, first, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you immediately see how both rappers were surrounded by these large, loyal entourages. Friends, bodyguards, hangers-on, people with deep ties to street life, some even gang-affiliated.
Crews.
Huge crews. And these weren't just supportive friends quietly in the background. Our sources show countless times where people within these crews, maybe seeking status or money or just action, they'd actively spread rumors, challenge rivals on the street, blow up minor slights into major confrontations.
So they were fueling the fire.
Absolutely. They thrived on the tension. It basically turned a personal misunderstanding into this collective feud. Both Tupac and Biggie felt like compelled to respond to maintain their crew's respect, and by extension, their own.
And that makes sense. These entourages almost created an echo chamber, didn't they? Where rumors and disses just got passed around, getting twisted and exaggerated.
Exactly, like a terrible game of telephone, but with incredibly high stakes. Instead of trying to cool things down, there was this constant undercurrent of instigation, of posturing. One source we looked at recounts this specific time where someone from one crew openly challenged the other crew at a club, nearly led to a brawl. And then, of course, Tupac and Biggie hear about it.
Adding another layer of perceived disrespect.
Precisely. It was this relentless outside noise that made any kind of real de-escalation just almost impossible.
And then there's the whole street code aspect, right?
Yeah, that's critical. In the world they lived in, hip-hop was deeply, deeply fused with the streets. A man's reputation was absolutely everything. Disrespect couldn't go unanswered. It just couldn't. And this wasn't just about, bruised egos. The material shows that disrespect in that environment, whether it's a line in a song, a look, a challenge, it carried real-world consequences.
So backing down wasn't really an option.
Not easily. To back down, risk not just your personal rep, but the respect for your whole crew, your label. It could be seen as weakness, potentially impacting street cred, business, even safety. This deeply ingrained cultural thing, it just cemented the divide even further, made reconciliation feel like betraying their own code.
Okay, so we had the entourages, the street code. But the industry itself played a role too, didn't it? A big one. The politics, the money, the publicity.
Oh, absolutely. A significant and often pretty predatory role. You look at labels like Bad Boy and Death Row and influential media outlets Vibe, The Source magazine. They quickly saw the immense commercial value in this whole East Coast versus West Coast narrative.
You saw dollar signs.
Big ones. What started as this personal thing was aggressively exploited. Inflammatory headlines, sensational articles, strategically releasing diss tracks. It turned a private feud into a national spectacle. Our research even points to instances where executives, maybe not overtly saying, let's fuel this, but certainly tacitly, discussed leveraging the rivalry in marketing, pushing inflammatory stuff in interviews, on album covers, all to boost sales. The artists were essentially being used, like soldiers or maybe pawns in a bigger lucrative industry battle.
Wow, and then Suge Knight gets involved.
Yes. And once Marion Suge Knight, the notoriously aggressive CEO of Death Row Records, got directly involved, things got way more personal, exponentially more dangerous. See, after Tupac signed with Death Row when he got out of prison, Suge Knight publicly started blaming Puff Daddy and Bad Boy for the Quad Studio shooting.
You could just put it out there.
Right out there. And then he systematically, aggressively antagonized them at every turn.
Yeah.
Most famously, remember the 1995 Source Awards? He gets on stage and basically tells any artist signed to Puffy, come to Death Row if you want to be a star.
Yeah, I remember that. That was intense.
It wasn't just talk. It was a direct public declaration of war. It elevated the whole thing beyond just a rivalry between two artists. It became this venomous label-on-label battle, deeply tangled up with the gang affiliations Suge Knight actively cultivated.
So that just poured gasoline on the fire.
Completely. And then you have this other dimension, the whole street life thing bleeding so tragically into their careers.
Their art was so tied to their experiences, right? Their lyrics were raw, they reflected their reality. But that connection, which was also their genius, it just became incredibly dangerous.
That's precisely it. Both Tupac and Biggie were walking this increasingly fine line. Their lyrics always touched on violence, paranoia, bravado, things rooted in their upbringing. But those themes started manifesting as real-world threats and actions. Tupac, especially after signing with Death Row, aligned himself much more closely with the label's gang ties, even adopted blood symbols. Biggie, while maybe less overtly tied to one gang, stayed deeply connected to his Brooklyn roots, the street cred that came with that.
So the lines just blurred completely.
They blurred completely. What started as music, as art, tragically turned into real-world violence. It was devastating, ultimately fatal. The words they wrote, the images they projected, under all that pressure, they almost became self-fulfilling prophecies.
It's just heavy. But it's really important to remember, isn't it? That despite all these powerful forces swirling around them, the crews, the industry, the street code, the media frenzy, the material we've looked at suggests neither artist likely wanted it to end this way. There were apparently attempts, behind the scenes to make peace.
You're right. There were efforts, private attempts to bridge that growing chasm, even while the public story was spiraling. Biggie, in some later interviews, he claimed he never really wanted the beef to go that far. Said he hoped they could settle it face to face.
But it just couldn't happen.
It seems like pride, the immense unrelenting pressure from their environments, and this deep-seated, probably justifiable paranoia. It just kept them apart. These really powerful human elements, right? But fueled relentlessly by all those external pressures we've talked about. The need to maintain face, the money involved, the media circus. It made genuine resolution almost impossible. There were just too many people in the middle, maybe. Too many vested interests in keeping the conflict going.
So the chance for peace just slipped away.
It slipped away amidst all the escalating tension. And ultimately it led to just unimaginable tragedy.
Ultimately, this whole tragic narrative, this perfect storm, it culminated in two horrific events that just shook the world. Tupac Shakur, shot in Las Vegas September 7th, 1996, after a Mike Tyson fight, died 6 days later. And then, just 6 months after that, March 9th, 1997, Christopher Wallace, Biggie Smalls, gunned down in Los Angeles.
Their story remains one of the most heartbreaking chapters in music history. Just a profound, irreplaceable loss for hip-hop.
Yeah.
And the most devastating part, both murders, officially unsolved to this day. Despite countless theories, endless speculation, ongoing investigations, nothing definitive. It's like this wound on the genre that, even decades later, hasn't fully healed, leaves behind so many what-ifs.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, listening to this? The story of Tupac and Biggie, it isn't just about two rap legends. It's this powerful, really stark reminder of what can happen when genuine camaraderie, forged and shared passion and struggle, gets completely overwhelmed by this convergence of external forces, distrust, ego, the insane pressures of fame, industry exploitation, the dangerous realities of street life.
Yeah, it shows us how quickly a personal relationship can just be consumed by a larger, often manufactured narrative, one that neither person really controls in the end.
They're remembered, obviously, for their lyrical genius, their artistry, their massive influence, but also this incredibly powerful cautionary tale. Their vibrant, powerful voices, once kind of united in respect, were turned against each other by forces much bigger than either of them, forces that thrived on conflict. And hip-hop, maybe the wider music world too, never fully recovered from losing both its kings so young, left this huge, unfillable void.
This deep dive really shows us, doesn't it, how quickly perception can become reality, and how these external narratives can completely hijack even the deepest personal relationships, pushing people to a point of no return. And it raises, I think, an important question for all of us. In a world that's just full of noise, conflicting interests, information spreading like wildfire, how do we even begin to tell the difference between genuine connection and manufactured rivalry?
Yeah. And maybe more critically, what role do we play as consumers, as amplifiers of stories? Do we fan the flames, or do we try to diffuse these kinds of conflicts?
Something to definitely mull over as you navigate your own world.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.